Now, last week, Wednesday of last week, I took my oldest son, Daniel, and we went to the SunTrust baseball park. We went and watched the Braves play. And it was our first time ever there to SunTrust Park, and it was an awesome experience. So I don't know who's in the room or who's watching online, but if you know somebody like who built it or designed it, give them my compliments, all right? Parking was great experience, had an awesome time. And we were there watching, we got there early, they were playing Toronto, and watched a little BP, and then the game started. And it was probably inning 2 or 3, and we had eaten beforehand. We were hanging out, just watching the game, having a great time, perfect night. About inning 2 or 3, I had this really weird, strong craving for Cracker Jacks. Now, that's not part of my normal diet, but man, at a baseball park, it just seemed like all of a sudden, man, I want to surprise Daniel. I was like, hey, just hang out here. I'm going to go get something for us. And he's like, okay. So I go down to the little mezzanine area, and I walk up and down this entire thing, looking at it for every food vendor and every snack shop and everything, looking for Cracker Jacks. I could not find anybody selling Cracker Jacks anywhere there on this level. And I thought, I'm at a baseball park. They don't sell Cracker Jacks. It's almost un-American, like where I'm at. And so I'm looking around kind of frustrated. So I go to the guest services window. Guy and a gal there, I go up. I was like, hey, where can I buy Cracker Jacks at? And she goes, are those peanuts? And I was like, well, they got peanuts in them. And she's like, oh, right around the corner. I was like, okay. So I wait in line, get up there, and I go, hey, need to buy some Cracker Jacks. And the guy's like, we don't sell them here. I'm like, oh, my goodness. So I go back to the guest services, and I go, they don't sell Cracker Jacks there. She goes, I thought you said they were peanuts. I go, oh, well, they got peanuts in them. And she goes, what are Cracker Jacks? I go, what? She goes, I don't know what Cracker Jacks are. I go, ma'am, you work at a baseball park and don't know what Cracker Jacks are? She's like, no. And then I go, ma'am, they're a part of your song. It's like your theme song. Like that's, and she goes, huh? And the guy next to her, he started singing, goes, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. She goes, I don't know what they are. And I look at him, and he goes, hang on a second. So he opens up his little sheet, and he goes, oh, it's section 326 behind home plate. So I walk all the way down, and there's a little teeny tiny nook, and I went up there. There were 2 bags of Cracker Jacks, and like a light shone on them, and angels sang, and I bought them, and I'm walking back to my seat, and I passed the guest services, and I thought about showing her what Cracker Jacks were, but I was like, forget that. So I go back to my seat, and I don't want to spoil her surprise. So I sit down there, and so if ever you go to SunTrust Park, just FYI, go to section 326, tell them Chris sent you, they'll know what you want, all right? But there's that moment where I wanted something, and nobody really seemed to get it or care, and then when I got it, I don't think they'd have been all that excited about it. And in life, there are things that, man, you want so bad, like you can almost just taste it, and you're praying to the Lord for it. You want to date her. You want him to ask you to marry you. You want that job. You want healing from that illness or that disease. You want to get a promotion. You want to get into the school that you want. You want to make the team. You want to lose the weight. There are things that you want so bad in life. You're praying to the Lord for it, and nobody really seems to care. And in fact, some circles you may run in, they might even push back on the thing that you're wanting. They might ridicule you. They might say your motives are all wrong. But there are those things that you want that, man, you're praying to the Lord for, but nobody really seems to care. And then you may be fortunate enough that those things come into place, right? She does go out with you. He does ask you to marry him. You do get the job. You are healed from the illness. You get the promotion. You do lose the weight. You get into the school. You make the team. God answers the prayer that you've been praying for. You're so excited, and nobody really seems to care. They're not all that happy for it. It's just kind of your thing. They're happy for you, but they're not all that excited. And we're looking at a story today of a gal named Hannah who wanted something so bad. Like so bad, you're going to see she goes through some pretty tough emotions. God answers it. And on either side of that prayer, nobody seems to care. And in fact, beforehand, there's some pushback, there's some ridicule, there's some wrong accusations. And on the flip side of the coin, nobody seems to be all that excited for her. But there in that moment, through both extremes, her pain and sorrow and anguish, and her excitement and rejoicing and praise, you're going to see one overarching principle that really defined Hannah's life in this moment that I think a lesson that you and I can learn in our life no matter the season we're walking through. If you got a Bible, I need you to open it up to 1 Samuel chapter 1. 1 Samuel chapter 1, and the thing that Hannah desired was a child. She'd been praying, she had wanted, she could not have children, and you're going to see in this moment the ridicule she went through, the insensitivity that was surrounding her, and what she did through it all. 1 Samuel chapter 1, we'll pick it up in verse 6. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle, and each time Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. She's wanting a child more than anything else. Not only is she having to walk through that, now she's getting ridiculed for not being able to have a child. She's there in that moment, she's reduced to tears so much so that she wouldn't even eat. And then in walks her husband, Elkanah. Verse 8. Why are you crying, Hannah? Elkanah would ask. Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? Now, I get, okay, so this is not a marriage talk, but just, FYI, don't be a jerk, all right? Basically, Elkanah walks in and goes, babe, well, you don't need to be pregnant, babe. You know what you got? This. Right? He probably spun a little bit for her like that. I mean, babe, you've got it. Is it better than 10 sons? She's just going, who did I marry? Okay? So that's where she's at. And so she goes off to pray and now gets wrongly accused. Verse 9. Once after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow, O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut. She's at this moment like of deep anguish and pain that she's walking through. She's crying out to the Lord. Right? She's bearing her heart and her soul. She's pouring it out before the Lord. And look at Eli's response, verse 12. As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her, seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound. He thought she had been drinking. Must you come here drunk, he demanded. Throw away your wine. Now, she's pouring out her heart to the Lord. This poor lady, she's been ridiculed by Peninnah. She has an insensitive husband who thinks, he's all that, and, he's all that. And now he goes to the temple, the tabernacle, and Eli goes, have you been doing that? This poor lady, and look at what she says. Verse 15. Oh, no, sir, she replied. I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger. And I just like the fact that she emphasized that. Have you been drinking not wine or anything else? All right, just so you know. She goes, but I'm very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I'm a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow. She just goes, I'm not drunk. I haven't been drinking. Man, but my heart's broken. There's something that I want so bad, but I can't seem to get, and nobody in my life really seems to care. Look what Eli says. Verse 17, in that case, Eli said, go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him. Verse 18, oh, thank you, sir, she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. She's crying out to the Lord in deep pain and anguish and crying out to the Lord. And there in this moment, after Eli accuses her of having too much wine, he goes, God has heard your prayers. Go back in peace. But he doesn't give her a time frame. He doesn't say, hey, in 9 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years, you'll be pregnant. He just goes, God has heard your request. She goes back no longer sad. God blesses her, gives her a son. She gives birth to a son. She raises him until he is weaned, and then she keeps her into the bargain. Because remember, she had told the Lord, listen, if you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. God gives her a son, and look at verse 27. She said, I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord. He will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worshiped the Lord there. Chapter 2, verse 1. Then Hannah prayed, my heart rejoices in the Lord. The Lord has made me strong. Now I have an answer for my enemies. I rejoice because you rescued me. No one is holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. And you see this exact opposite end of the spectrum, from pain and anguish to great happiness, joy, and praise. God heard me, God answered, God gave me a son, and now I'm giving him back. And all praise and all glory and all honor goes back to my rock, my God. And you see both ends of the spectrum, through pain and through praise. Hannah is there, regardless of Eli accusing her, Elkanah being insensitive, Peninnah making fun of her. She's there, and in that moment, what I want you to grasp is that she poured out her heart to the Lord through both pain and praise. She poured out her heart to the Lord. Her heart, her soul, in both the devastating, frustrating, anguishing times and through the joyful, exciting, glorious times. Through it all, there in that moment, she pours out her heart to the Lord through pain and through praise. So let's talk about that for a second. Pain and praise. Really couldn't get two more opposite ends of that emotional spectrum. Let's talk about pain for a second. Pain is that emotional pain, physical pain, relational pain, financial pain. It's that thing in your life that you're walking through. It's a sickness, it's a loss of a job, it's a divorce, it's a breakup, it's getting cut from the team. It's that pain in your life that maybe you caused it, maybe you did it, but you're walking through it. Sadness, heartache, grief, anguish, sorrow, it's that pain in your life. And in this moment, as Hannah's walking through it, she pours out her heart to the Lord. And let me just give you a very simple illustration and demonstration of what it really looks like to pour out your heart and your life to the Lord through pain. And let's just let this pitcher of water represent you, and let's let the water represent pain. And let's let this represent the Lord. Now, if you notice, whenever you pour something, you pour it from here to there. And whenever you pour anything, whether it's you're filling up drinks or you're pouring out shampoo or you're pouring out salt, whenever you pour something out, the intention is not for that water to go back in here. The intention is for it to be poured out and to stay wherever it is that you're pouring. You don't pour it out and then pour it back and pour it out and pour it back. And what you need to notice about Hannah is that when she went to the tabernacle and prayed, Eli said, God has heard it. Verse 18, it says, she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad, even though she wasn't yet pregnant. Like her prayer had not been answered, but she was no longer sad. And so when it comes to pain in your life, what I want you to grasp is to let the Lord deal with it. Let the Lord deal with it. See, all too often we pour our pain out to the Lord, and then we pick it right back up. Oh, Lord, this pain is yours, this breakup is yours, my past is yours. We give it to the Lord, and it doesn't work out the way we want to, so we pick it back up and we take it with us. And when it comes to the pain in your life, let the Lord deal with it. David would say this, he said, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. A guy named Peter would say, give all your worries to God because he cares for you. Jesus would say, come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I'll give you rest. And so it's this idea of pouring out your pain to the Lord. Now, here's the thing. Life has a way of filling your pitcher back up with pain. You don't have to worry about getting filled. It'll just happen. And when that happens, you just get poured out. Lord, this is what's happening. Lord, my heart is broken. Lord, I'm frustrated. Lord, I'm not pregnant. Lord, I'm sick. Lord, I've lost my job. And you keep pouring it out. And don't worry, life will fill it back up. But what happens when you don't pour it out is all of a sudden the pain comes up to the top and it overflows. And you've heard the phrase, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I guess in that metaphor, you and I are the proverbial camels, which I'm not sure how I feel about that, but we're the camel. Right? And that straw is a life situation or circumstance. It was that thing that was just one too many and it broke us. It just wore us down. It was that conversation or that email, or that text message, or that interaction that thing, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's an interesting phrase. It's that strange phrase when you think about it, because you know how you keep that straw from breaking the camel's back? Don't put so much weight on the camel to begin with. It wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. It was all the other weight that was never offloaded. Kept piling it and piling it and piling it and piling it. So it wasn't this one little straw. It was all the other weight that nobody ever said, hey, camel, let me take some of the weight off. And when Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdened, I will give you rest. What he means is going, man, pour out your heart and your pain and your anguish to me and leave it there. And maybe for many of you, you need to sit down with a Christian counselor and begin to walk through this and what it really looks like to pour out your pain before the Lord. Great Christian counselor will give you some awesome practical tools in your life of going, hey, here's how you process what you've gone through. Here's how you deal with it. Here's how the Lord interacts, and here's how the Lord begins to heal your pain. And here's how you leave it at the feet of Jesus and begin to walk out. And don't worry, life will fill it back up, but you begin to pour it out to the Lord. And you know this inherently, but a wound left unattended to will become infected. A wound, that thing left unattended to, will become infected. And oftentimes when we have pain in our life, we just go, I'll fix it later. I'll deal with it later. I'll mess with it later. Wound left unattended will become infected. And so you have to go in and you have to clean out the wound. And yes, it's a short time pain, but for a long-term benefit. And so, pouring out your pain to the Lord, it might be uncomfortable. It might bring up unpleasant memories, but it's way better than the alternative. It's the long-term benefit. Last summer, my son David, who's 8, stepped on a rusty nail, went through his shoe into his foot. And it was late at night. It was one of those deals where we took it off. Fortunately, he had had his tetanus shot, but man, we looked at it, and it was a rusty nail, in there. All the other kids were asleep, and so we put David up on the kitchen countertop and put his foot over the sink, and Brianna and I knew we had to clean out the wound. So we take off his shoe and his sock. It was one of those deals where you look at it as a parent and you try not to freak out. You know what I'm talking about? You just go, oh, it's not bad. You're good. And he's sitting there, and I look at Brianna and I go, man, that is deep. And she goes, yeah, we're going to have to clean it out. And so we began to clean it out. And I looked at David, and I knew he was about to go through. I go, son, it's going to hurt. And Brianna goes, don't tell him that. I was like, I'm just, I was like, son, it's going to hurt. He goes, okay. I go, but man, if you're tough and you get through this, I'll get you a popsicle. Pretty cheap bribe. He goes, oh, okay. So he sits there with his foot out like that, and Bri and I, man, we just go at it. We just start digging and cleaning out the rust. And he's there, and you can see, like, his eyes are watering, but he ain't crying. He's just there just holding it and just going through it. Like 30 minutes of cleaning this thing out. Finally, we get it all cleaned out. I go, buddy, I'm going to Kroger to get you some popsicles. I go back. I go, you can have the whole box, man. You deserve it. There's a moment where we go, buddy, it's going to be painful for a minute, but it sure beats a hospital visit. Sure beats an infection. There's pain in your life that you've walked through that you're going, I'll just push it down and push it down and push it down. And so it's not this pain or this pain. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back because the weight wasn't offloaded. Man, if you're here today and you're walking through some pain, my prayer is that you begin to pour out your heart to the Lord and go, Lord, this is what I'm dealing with. Now, I want you to go back and I want you to look, chapter 2, verse 1, on the flip side of the coin for her praise. Chapter 2, verse 1, she says, my heart rejoices in the Lord. The Lord has made me strong. Now I have an answer for my enemies. I rejoice because you, meaning the Lord, rescued me. No one is holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. She gets through the other side. God answers, gives her a son. And what I want you to know about her praise is simply this, is that all of it went back to the Lord. All of it. She didn't get through it, and she didn't say there, well, you know what, Peninnah, and she made fun of me, and Elkanah, man, he's an insensitive person. Eli wrongly accused me. Because of my faith, I got through this. Because of my obedience, I got through this. Because of my dedication to the Lord, I got through this. She goes, no. It's all because of God. The only way this happens and this works out is because of Him. All praise, honor, and credit goes back to the Lord. So when it comes to praise in your life, make sure the Lord gets it all. Make sure the Lord gets it all. Don't take partial credit for the full credit that God deserves. Don't take partial credit going, well, I walked in obedience. I took a step of faith. I worked really hard. Yeah, and it could have gone really south really fast. But God answered, God showed up, God provided, and you come out the other side. All praise and credit go back to him. And so when it comes back to this picture, what I want you to notice the second part about this. Now, this picture represents you. This water represents the praise or the credit you've been given. And the best way for this praise to go into here, back to the Lord, is for this picture to humbly bow. To humbly bow. It has to be bent over. And that's when it comes to praise, it has to take an act of humility going, it wasn't me, it wasn't my hard work, it wasn't my effort, it was all to God, and you humbly offer the praise back to him. Now, there are two other ways for this water to get out of this pitcher. There are two other ways for this water to get. Now, the simplest, easiest, least messy way is for it to bow humbly and to pour it back to God. But the first way is for this jar to be shaken up. Came out, didn't it? It didn't have to bend over. It wasn't humble, but man, it made a mess. So it can be shaken. You know the other way the water can get out of this pitcher? If it's broken. I'm just kidding. Man, you screamed. What kind of person would I be? Anyway, I should have got you all goggles or something. Anyway. All right, it can be broken. Now, here's the thing. The scripture teaches that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So, personally speaking, this is Chris speaking from personal experience, it is way less embarrassing to humble yourself than to have the Lord humble you. Oh, you same boat, all right. Okay, good. It's way less embarrassing going, Lord, you deserve all glory, all honor, all credit, all praise. Anything good that's happened in my life, it should be poured out to you. I'm going to keep nothing in my life of praise and honor. It all goes back to you. Now, the world, they'll fill it back up. They'll give you attaboys and accolades, and you're awesome, and you're this, and you just keep pouring it out to the Lord. There's a crazy story in Daniel chapter 4. There's one, just a part of it. A guy named King Nebuchadnezzar that got a little big for his britches. Y'all use that phrase? Okay. A little arrogant? I was told that all the time growing up. Anyway, Daniel chapter 4, verse 30. It's a weird story. It says, as he, meaning Nebuchadnezzar, looked out across the city, he said, look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power, I've built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. Verse 31. While these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You'll be driven from human society. You'll live in the fields with wild animals, and you will eat grass like a cow. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. Lord ain't messing around. Within the hour that happens to him. Don't miss this. 60 minutes of his life. Within 1 hour, he goes from eating like a king to literally eating like a cow. Why? Because it was all about him. It's my kingdom and my splendor, my glory. And God goes, It ain't you. It ain't your kingdom. It ain't your glory. It ain't your power. And I'll show you. All praise, all glory, all honor should be poured out to him. You see, Hannah, there in this moment, she didn't say, well, I kind of walked through some difficult times. I was faithful. It's going, no, Lord, it all goes back to you. All glory and honor and praise. So you and I, we pour out our hearts to the Lord through the pain and through the praise. The pain because he's got big shoulders enough to deal with it. The praise because he deserves every bit of it. And there in this moment, Hannah gets the son and gives him back. Now, here's what's interesting. When you follow Hannah's story, kind of the rest of the story, the son that she gave birth to was a son, and she named him Samuel. Samuel was the guy that went to Jesse's house that anointed a guy named David, who became the king of Israel. David and Goliath, that David. Through the lineage of David came Jesus. Fast forward from Jesus to the church to us. Now, my guess is that when Hannah is there praying, and Peninnah is making fun of her, and Elkanah is being insensitive, and Eli thinks she's had too much to drink, My guess is she was not thinking, hey, maybe one day the Lord will answer this, and through my prayer, the Messiah will come, and thousands of years later, people will be talking about me. She was just there going, Lord, I want a kid. My heart's breaking. I'm a lady who wants to be a mom. Lord, my heart's breaking, and I'm pouring out my heart. And God goes, I hear you, and I'm answering it, and God does. And she goes, all praise and glory back to him. Now, why in the world should I pour out my heart to the Lord? I'll finish with this, and I'll show you exactly why we do that. In Luke chapter 22, it's the night before Jesus was crucified. In verse 19, it says, he took some bread, meaning Jesus, and gave thanks to God for it. He broke it in pieces and gave to the disciples, saying, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this to remember me. And after supper, he took another cup of wine and said, this cup is the new covenant between God and his people. An agreement confirmed with my blood, that last phrase, which is poured out as a sacrifice for you. Pour out your heart to the one who poured out his life for you. Right, you pour out your pain, you pour out your praise, you pour out your anguish. Why? Because he poured out his life for you. His blood was spilled out and body was broken for you and for me, so that you and I can spend eternity in heaven with him. This is why we give him all of our pain and our anguish. This is why we give him all the praise and the glory and the honor. Because he deserves every bit of the praise and honor, and he can handle all of our pain and anguish. And he demonstrated that by pouring out his life for you and for me. So how different would your life be if you quit playing church and Christianity? And you said, you know what? Regardless of what people say, I'm pouring out my pain, I'm pouring out my praise, and all glory and honor go back to him. And I don't know what you're walking through. I don't know your story. I know probably half of you are at least in the painful side. Golly, you want something so bad it hurts. And probably half of you on the praise side. Hey, God is blessed and he's given you more than you could ever ask for. Either which way you find yourself, I think it's time that we let down our guard and begin to pour out our heart and soul and saying, it's all about you, Lord. My pain and anguish go to you, and my praise and glory go to you. Let me pray for us. With every head bowed and every eye closed. If you're here today and you've never trusted in Jesus Christ, I'm here to tell you, man, just as simply as I possibly can, that he went to the cross for you. His body was broken. His blood was shed for you. He died on the cross. He was buried for 3 days, and God raised him from the grave. And the simple truth of life is that if you would place your faith in Jesus Christ, you will receive eternal life. You will receive hope and forgiveness and a purpose like you can't even imagine. But it takes that step of obedience of faith, going, I'm placing my faith in Jesus and what happened on the cross. If you've never done that, you're going, man, how do I do that? It's super clear and it's super easy. You just place your faith in him. Just say something like this and mean it from the depths of your heart. Just say, today, Jesus, I know I'm a sinner. And without you, I cannot get into heaven. So Jesus, come into my heart. Forgive me for my sins. Jesus, fill me with your spirit and help me to walk for you for the rest of my life from this day forward. Thank you for my salvation. Father, I pray for all of us here in this room and watching online. I think it's so easy to bottle up the pain and go, I'll deal with it later, or to inhale all the glory and praise for ourselves. And Lord, let us not fall in either extreme of that. Lord, let us pour out our heart and our soul and our mind to you, because you can handle our pain and you deserve our praise. We love you, Jesus, and ask these things in your name. Amen.